I knew something was off the moment I stepped into the boardroom. The air was too still, the tension too thick. Catherine Langford sat at the head of the table, like a queen preparing for execution. Only this time, the traitor was me. Her voice, crisp and theatrical, sliced through the silence before I even took my seat. "This is a real company, Elaine, not a science fair project," she said, her fingers perfectly spread across the polished oak. "We need someone who understands the market, someone who doesn't just tinker." I sat down slowly, ignoring the chill that ran down my spine. 6 years of work, of sweat, isolation, and innovation were being reduced to the word tinker. I glanced at Ethan, my husband, sitting 3 seats away in his usual muted suit. He didn't meet my eyes, and that told me everything. "We've brought in Lena Armstrong to take over the R&D division," Catherine continued, her tone so polished it sounded like pity. "Effective immediately." Lena gave a modest little smile from the far end of the table. 3 months at the company, a shiny MBA from Wharton, and she already looked like she owned the place. I couldn't even summon the strength to be angry at her. Not yet. "My name is Dr. Elaine Rivers. I'm 32 years old, and I helped build Langford Dynamics from a one-room lab above a coffee shop into one of the most promising biomedical startups in the Pacific Northwest." But none of that mattered now, because to Catherine Langford, I was never more than her son's inconvenient wife. She had been waiting for this moment. The IPO was 6 months away, and she wanted a corporate face the investors could fall in love with, not a woman in a lab coat with calloused hands and messy notes. "You'll find the transition agreement in front of you," she said, sliding a folder my way. "We're offering a generous severance package, of course, and HR will help with your offboarding." I didn't touch the papers. I just stared at the embossed Langford Dynamics logo on the folder, my name not even printed anywhere on it, not even in courtesy. "And if I refuse?" I asked. My voice was calm, colder than even I expected. A part of me had already detached, watching the scene from outside my own body. Catherine's smile sharpened. "Then we'll revisit your employment contract. I believe there's a 5-year non-compete clause. Would be unfortunate if you couldn't work in this field anymore." I remembered drafting that clause. I had written it myself, back when I believed I was protecting our company, our future. Daniel, no Ethan, finally shifted. "Mother, maybe we should reconsider." "No, Ethan," she snapped. "This isn't personal. This is business. Elaine's contributions were valuable once, but we've evolved. We need leadership, not chemistry sets." I scanned the faces around the table. Not one board member looked at me. Not Mr. Fulton, who once called me the future of biomedical engineering. Not even Marta Jensen, who toasted with me when we landed our first military contract. They were all too scared of Catherine, or too tired of caring. But what they didn't know, what Catherine had forgotten in her blind ambition, was that the patents, the algorithms, the neural interface protocols, none of it belonged to Langford Dynamics. They belonged to me. I stood up, the transition folder still untouched. "I'll need to review this with my lawyer," I said, folding my hands neatly behind my back. "I assume that's acceptable." Catherine waved her hand as if I were a fly at her garden brunch. "Take all the time you need, but I expect your office cleared by end of day. Lena needs to hit the ground running." Lena's voice followed me out, syrupy sweet. "Don't worry, Elaine. I'll take good care of your projects." I didn't reply. Let them think I was leaving quietly. Let them believe they'd won. They had no idea who they just cut loose. By the time I reached my office, the vultures had already circled. For cardboard boxes were stacked neatly by the door, labeled in black marker with my name, as if someone had taken care to ensure I wouldn't mistake this for anything but an eviction. The blinds were half closed. The space felt smaller than usual, colder. I paused just long enough to take it in. 6 years. I had spent 6 years in this room. eating takeout over spreadsheets, collapsing on that gray couch after 36-hour prototype cycles, writing the future with bare hands and borrowed time. And now, boxed up like last season's inventory, I stepped inside. On my desk was an envelope. Another one, this time from HR. I didn't need to open it. I already knew the words. Please ensure all company materials remain on site. Personal belongings will be mailed to your forwarding address, pending clearance. The corporate way of saying, you're no longer welcome here. The door creaked behind me. It was Ethan. His tie was loose and he looked tired, like he hadn't slept, but not because of guilt, because confrontation had always drained him. Elaine, he said softly, a nickname I hadn't heard from him in months. I didn't answer. I was busy sliding my research journals into a box. My hands were steady. My chest wasn't. I tried to stop her, he said. You know how she gets. I turned slowly. Do I? He flinched just a little. She thinks the investors won't respond well to a non-traditional executive. With the IPO, she's worried about optics. Optics, I repeated. Right. A woman with 3 degrees, 9 published studies, and a brain full of patents is bad optics. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I let the words fall flat, and you let it happen. His mouth opened, then closed again. No defense. No courage. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out the only thing that mattered now. A small silver USB drive. On it was everything. My patent filings. My private correspondence. My experimental logs. Copies of all licensing agreements I had negotiated, always as an individual, always in my name. Catherine had never bothered to read the fine print. I'll be out of the house tonight, I said, closing the lid on one of the boxes. I'll book a hotel for now. Elaine, wait! He stepped forward, as if realizing something was slipping through his fingers. We can talk this through. I know she was harsh, but we can fix this. I laughed. Once. Sharp. Empty. The IPO. I said, my tone suddenly calm. Good luck with that. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? I didn't answer. I picked up the first box and started walking. His hand caught my arm gently. What are you planning? He asked, his voice cracking under the weight of fear. I turned, met his eyes, and said the one thing I knew Catherine would understand perfectly. It's just business. Nothing personal. Then I walked away, leaving my husband standing in an empty hallway, surrounded by silence and the very empire that would soon begin to collapse. The apartment I moved into wasn't much, bare walls, a mattress on the floor, and a view of the highway instead of the sound. But it gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. No footsteps outside my office. No eyes tracking my schedule. No emails from HR. Just silence and the low hum of something rebuilding itself inside me. 1 week after my forced exit, I walked into the marble lobby of Delgado and Rice LLP with nothing but a USB drive in my coat pocket and fire in my chest. Jonas Delgado looked up from his desk the moment I entered. I saw it on the news, he said, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. Langford's big shakeup. Guess I shouldn't be surprised. I am, I replied, dropping into the chair across from him. Not that it happened, just that it took her this long. He nodded. You're ready. I took the USB out and placed it on the glass between us. Everything we prepared. Everything I kept. It's time. He opened the files, scanning quickly. It didn't take long. Jonas had helped me structure every agreement from the beginning. When I first joined Langford Dynamics, fresh out of my postdoc program, I insisted on one thing: retention of individual patent ownership. Catherine had scoffed, but she let it slide, probably thinking it was just a naive little boundary I'd forget about later. But I never forgot. You're covered, Jonas said after a moment. All core patents are yours. Langford Dynamics only holds usage licenses, temporary ones, tied to your employment. And now. He smiled faintly. Now they're expiring, and they can't launch their new product line without infringing. If they do, we sue. If they stall, they miss their IPO window. I sat back. So we wait. We wait, Jonas confirmed. Let them move forward. Let them invest, build hype, get the media rolling. And then we show them who actually owns this company's future. The idea wasn't revenge. Not really. I wasn't here to burn Catherine's name to the ground or humiliate Ethan in front of the board. I just wanted the truth to be louder than the lies. I wanted a moment of silence and then the sound of everything falling into place. For the next 3 weeks, I worked like a woman possessed. By day, I met with legal teams and investors, mapping out every route I could take once the dominoes fell. By night, I combed through every file I'd ever touched at Langford, highlighting what was mine, what was shared, what they had no right to touch. Meanwhile, Langford Dynamics moved quickly. Catherine released a statement about a new era of innovation. She used words like streamlining, vision, and corporate alignment. She praised Lena Armstrong's business-first leadership and fresh perspective. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. But that was fine. They wanted the story to be about Catherine Langford saving the company. They were going to get a very different headline soon. Jonas and I watched them dig themselves deeper. Press releases, teaser videos, investor roadshows. The more they committed to the launch, the better for us. Every dollar they spent made the fall harder. Still, some nights when I couldn't sleep, I wondered if I was being petty. If this was just a grudge in disguise. But then I'd think of Ethan's eyes that day in the hallway, how hollow they looked. And of Catherine's voice, polished and poisonous, as she smiled across that boardroom table. And I'd remember, they didn't just push me out. They tried to erase me. I wasn't going to let that happen. 3 months later, the headlines were everywhere. Langford Dynamics to announce revolutionary biomedical launch. IPO surge expected as company prepares new neural interface tech. CEO Catherine Langford to lead historic presentation in Seattle. I watched the press unfold from a leather armchair in Jonas Delgado's office. We had coffee. We had screens. We had time. Downstairs at Langford HQ, investors were gathering. Cameras were rolling. Catherine was preparing her speech, probably practicing her signature pauses, the kind that made her seem in control even when the ground was cracking under her heels. "They're 10 minutes out," Jonas said, checking the live stream buffer. "You ready?" I nodded, reaching into my bag. The email was drafted and waiting. All I had to do was press send. The stream came alive. Catherine Langford took the stage in her deep navy power suit, a smile so practiced it barely twitched under pressure. Lena stood to her left, her posture immaculate, her smile a little too wide. On the screen behind them, my work, the very heart of it, flashed in sleek animations and bold language. Adaptive neural biolink, they called it. Years in the making. Yes, I thought my years. Catherine began her speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, this moment marks the culmination of relentless innovation and visionary leadership." I didn't need to listen. I had written versions of that speech before, when we were smaller, when we were honest. But this wasn't about memories anymore. Now. Jonas asked. "Wait," I said, sipping my coffee. "Let her finish her big opening." A few minutes in, a reporter from the front row stood up. I recognized her immediately, Maya Trent, investigative journalist from Bloomberg Tech, the kind of woman who never asked permission and never softened question. "Ms. Langford," Maya said, "clearly, the technologies presented today appear nearly identical to a series of patents registered to Dr. Elaine Rivers. Can you speak to the licensing arrangements your company has in place?" Catherine's eyes flickered, just for a second. Then the media training kicked in. "All intellectual property presented today is legally licensed and documented," she said smoothly. "Langford Dynamics holds full rights to our entire product portfolio." I met Jonas's eyes. "Now," I said. He turned his laptop toward me. I pressed send. The email went out instantly to every major tech outlet, every investor on Langford's IPO list, and every legal contact Jonas and I had prepared. Subject: Patent Use Suspension Notice, Dr. Elaine Rivers Body. As of today, I am revoking Langford Dynamics license to use my patented neural interface technology. Any continued use constitutes infringement and will be pursued legally. Phones began buzzing in the press room. Catherine kept talking, unaware at first. But then the murmurs grew louder. Eyes dropped to screens. A few investors began whispering, then standing up. Maya Trent raised her hand again. Ms. Langford, we've just received a statement from Dr. Rivers. It says your rights to use her patents have expired. Can you confirm or deny this? For the first time in years, Catherine Langford went speechless. Lena's face paled. The live feed stuttered for a moment as camera operators zoomed in on the confusion unraveling on stage. Catherine fumbled through her cue cards. This is a miscommunication. We'll be reviewing the legal claims internally. But it was too late. Investors were walking out, phones glued to their ears. Stocks began slipping. First 2%, then 5%, then double digits in a matter of minutes. Behind Catherine, the glossy images of my research were still spinning across the screen like digital ghosts, reminding them all of the woman they tried to erase. I closed the laptop gently. Perfect timing, Jonas murmured. That just sank their IPO. I leaned back in my chair, every nerve buzzing not with adrenaline, but with clarity. They started this, I said quietly. Now I finish it. My phone rang less than 30 minutes after the presentation collapsed. Catherine Langford. Right on cue. Jonas looked over from the kitchen counter, where he was making tea like this was just another Tuesday evening. Take it, he said, a knowing smile tugging at his mouth. But remember, every word matters now. I let it ring twice more, then picked up. Hello, Catherine. Her voice came in tight, controlled, like a piano wire drawn too taut. What do you think you're doing? I sat down by the window, watching the Seattle skyline flicker in the dark. Protecting my intellectual property, I said evenly. Isn't that what you taught me? Always protect your assets. Your assets, she hissed. Everything you developed was for Langford Dynamics. You don't have the right. I have every right, I interrupted, letting the chill in my tone spread. You never bothered to read the fine print, Catherine. You were too busy positioning Lena for photo ops. There was a pause, a heavy, dangerous silence. What do you want? She finally asked, voice lower, less steel, more desperation. I looked over at the stack of documents Jonas had printed earlier, the licensing terms, the paper trail, the proof that every innovation tied to their IPO was still legally mine. I want what I've earned, I said, and we'll discuss the details with our lawyers. I suggest you prepare thoroughly this time. This isn't over, Elaine. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. I ended the call without waiting for her reply. Jonas raised his mug in salute. But the evening wasn't done yet. Not 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Ethan. I considered ignoring it, then answered. He didn't waste time. You planned this, he said, voice hoarse. From the beginning. No, I said simply. I planned at the moment your mother decided my work didn't matter. When she tried to hand my life's work to someone else like it was hers to give. He was quiet. I pressed on. Do you know what hurt the most, Ethan? Not her. You. You were supposed to stand beside me. You were supposed to know better. I didn't think she'd actually. No, I cut him off. You didn't think I'd fight back. He exhaled shakily. The board is in meltdown. Investors are pulling out. Our stock dropped 15%. 23, I corrected. I've been watching. You're destroying everything we built. I shook my head slowly. You still don't get it. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just taking back what's mine. What do you want, Elaine? Name your price. I laughed then, a soft, sharp sound that held no humor. That's the problem. You think this is about money. Then what is it about? It's about respect. It's about knowing what I built and refusing to be erased for the sake of your mother's vanity. He was silent again. I walked to my desk, picked up a slim folder, and pulled out the printed email chain. Do you want to know what she wrote about me in her messages to Lena? That I was a necessary inconvenience. That I needed to be managed out quietly so you could pursue a more suitable future. His voice dropped. Where did you get that? I'm the one who built your company's entire data security system, remember? When he didn't answer, I added softly, You weren't just silent, Ethan. You were complicit. The last thing he said before hanging up was almost a whisper. She never thought you'd go this far. She should have, I replied. You both should have. I stood by the window long after the call ended, watching the world go on outside, while everything Catherine Langford built began to unravel. And deep in my chest, for the first time in years, I felt free. The message came through a private number, just past 10 p.m., Lena Armstrong. I need to talk to you. In person. Please. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity has a way of slipping through even the strongest walls. So I agreed on my terms. The next morning, I arrived at the Edison Cafe on Peachtree Street. Quiet, upscale, neutral ground. Lena was already there, sitting stiffly at a corner table with a cappuccino she hadn't touched. Her blazer looked slightly wrinkled. Her face, usually polished to corporate perfection, was pale, exhausted. Elaine, she said as I sat down, voice strained. Thank you for coming. I nodded. Why am I here? She took a breath. This isn't about saving face. I know what I did. I know how it looked. But you need to understand, I thought I was stepping into a role. I didn't realize I was stepping into a war. I stayed silent. She told me you were stepping down, Lena continued, that you were overwhelmed, that the company needed a steadier hand for the IPO. I believed her. I raised an eyebrow. And you believed that without asking me? Without a single question? Her lips tightened. I was ambitious, naive, maybe both, but that's not why I asked to meet. She pulled out a flash drive from her coat pocket, setting it gently on the table. She's preparing to sue you. Hard. Not just civil litigation. She's working with a team to fabricate internal documentation to make it look like you developed your patents on company time, without prior agreement. I blinked slowly. She's planning to tie you up in court until your licenses expire, hoping to freeze your ability to collaborate with any new partner, Lena added. She's even considering criminal charges, fraud, data manipulation, misappropriation. I let the silence stretch. Then said, Why are you telling me this? Her shoulders slumped. Because I didn't sign up for this kind of war. I wanted to lead R&D, not destroy the woman who built it. And because I know what it feels like to be used. She's using me now the same way she used you. I reached for the flash drive, but paused. If I help you land on your feet, what's stopping you from flipping again when things get hard? Her face flushed. But her voice finally held some steel. Nothing. Except that I'm done being someone's pawn. I want out. I pocketed the drive. You'll send me everything? I asked. Every document, every email, every voice memo I've been copied on. And you understand what happens next, right? I said softly. This ends with her removed. Publicly. Lena nodded. I'm counting on it. As I walked away from the cafe, I could feel it, pieces clicking into place. The trap she'd set for me was about to spring shut on her. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off and reviewed everything Lena had sent. It was worse than I expected. Catherine had been preparing this for over a year, long before the IPO talks began. Her emails outlined a strategy to paint me as an unstable founder. Her memos to PR hinted at quietly phasing out the scientist image in favor of professional female leadership with market polish. She hadn't just wanted me gone. She wanted me discredited. I forwarded the full archive to Jonas with one line: "Let's end this." The elevator ride to the 21st floor felt different this time. No bitterness, no fear, just focus. Jonas stood beside me, a leather portfolio under one arm and a quiet fire in his eyes. "You ready?" he asked. "Let's finish it," I replied. The boardroom was already full when we stepped in, just like the day I was ousted. Same table, same polished wood, same silence. Catherine Langford stood at the head of the room, mid-sentence, gesturing toward a projection of financial projections. Ethan sat beside her, shoulders tight, eyes flickering toward the door when he saw me. Lena was there too, pale, but still. The moment Catherine noticed us, her voice froze. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped. "This is a private meeting." "Actually," I said, placing the folder on the table, "this is exactly where we need to be." I looked at the chairman, an older man named Bruce Taylor, who had served on this board longer than anyone. "We have evidence of attempted fraud, patent theft, and internal manipulation that concerns every shareholder in this room." "Let her speak," Bruce said firmly. "Given the company's current crisis, I think we all deserve transparency." Catherine's jaw clenched. I opened the folder. For the next hour, I presented everything. The patents filed in my name, the licensing agreements, the termination triggers, the internal emails, doctored, forwarded, and deleted, Lena's sworn testimony, audio clips, memos, every single thread Catherine had pulled to quietly erase me, now strung together in public view. Her face changed color 3 times, but she never interrupted. Not once. When I finished, the room was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries consequences. Catherine stood. "This is ridiculous," she said, voice trembling. "She's trying to destroy everything we've built." A pause. Then Ethan spoke. "No," he said. "She's trying to save it. From you." Gasps rippled around the table. Catherine turned to him, horrified. "Ethan." "I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current CEO," he said, standing straighter than I'd ever seen him. One by one, hands went up. Unanimous. Within minutes, Catherine Langford was no longer CEO of Langford Dynamics. Within 2 hours, the board had voted to approve my proposal, an emergency partnership with Thompson Medical that would stabilize the company, preserve my patents, and avoid a catastrophic lawsuit. A merger that would transform both companies into something stronger, and mine. As the room cleared, Ethan approached. His eyes were tired, but genuine. "I know it's too late," he said quietly. "Too late for us, I mean. But thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." I nodded. "Take care of the company, Ethan. Make your father proud." Then I turned, gathered my things, and walked out of that boardroom, not as the girl who had once been someone's wife, but as the woman who just rewrote the future. The new office wasn't grand, not like the glass fortress Catherine used to rule from, but it had everything I needed: light, space, silence, and a locked cabinet full of signed licensing deals. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the Seattle skyline blink against the fading light. Behind me, a full wall was lined with framed patents, my name engraved on every one, not hidden in a lab, not buried in fine print, but visible, public, proud. 6 months ago, they tried to write me out of the story. Today, I sat on the board of directors of Thompson Medical, one of the most respected tech health firms in the country. We had just finalized the merger with Langford Dynamics under new leadership. My leadership. I had spent the last few months rebuilding what Catherine tried to destroy. Not just my reputation, but my voice, my momentum, my belief in the work itself. We launched 3 pilot programs for adaptive neural recovery therapy in veterans' hospitals across the West Coast. The first clinical data just came in. The technology one created was changing lives. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could breathe. A soft chime pulled me out of the moment. A package sat on the edge of my desk, small, brown paper, hand-addressed. No return label, but I knew that handwriting anywhere. Inside was a familiar object. A tiny robot figurine with uneven arms and a lopsided smile, the very first prototype I ever built back in grad school. The one I kept on my desk every day until the day they boxed me up. Tucked beside it was a note in Ethan's handwriting. This belonged with its creator. Thank you for teaching me what real business looks like. I didn't cry. I just smiled, then placed the robot next to my monitor, like a quiet guardian of everything I'd fought for, everything I'd reclaimed. They called me a hobbyist, a woman with too much brain and too little polish, an inconvenience, a liability, a temporary player in someone else's empire. But they forgot the most important rule in business. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove.